start.
Is my voice
Yes, ma'am.
Ah,
Sure.
clear?
yeah.
Is my voice clear?
Voice
Yes, ma'am.
clear?
Your voice is clear.
There is no
You can.
disturbance, no?
No disturbance at all.
There is no
Uh,
PPT.
Yes, ma'am.
Kiran, you're saying something?
No, I said I don't have any presentation. I'm just
Yeah,
going
I have
to.
conveyed. Yeah, I have conveyed that to Neela. Neela is the one who is operating from Kaveri College, and
Okay,
so my colleagues are also there, Dr. Murugeshwari and Dr. Shubha, and
okay, okay.
participants all over the country. So
Country,
there
I
are
know.
around 150, 60. They will slowly be joining, but we can
Yes.
start and
Okay.
Yes,
let
ma'am.
them all. Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Neela,
ma'am.
please.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon to one and all. It gives
Yeah.
me an immense pleasure to welcome you all for this 1 month gender sensitization and capacity building program on gender, society, economy, and polity, organized by Department of Women's Studies, Bharatidasan University, Center for Women's Studies, and National Service Scheme of Kaveri College for Women, and Regional Association for Women's Studies, ROS. May I now request Dr. N. Murugeshwari, Professor, Department of Women's Studies, Bharatidasan University, to render welcome address. Welcome you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Neela. So, very good afternoon to all. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am,
Yes.
you are
You
audible,
are
ma'am.
you are audible. Yeah.
Okay. See, there are some important steps taken by the government towards empowerment and gender equality. For example, establishment of separate ministry for women and child development, which is meant to improve their conditions. So, in the current scenario, we are in need to understand what are the government policies that are relating to women. For example, equal access to participation and decision making of women in social, political, and economic life, health care, quality education, employment, equal remuneration, safety, social security, and strengthening our legal system, etc. So, in this view, today we have the right person to talk about COVID-19, women and government policies. Madam Kiran Mohi is here. She is an activist, executive council member, newsletter, particularly in Indian Academic Researchers Association. She is a editor, Pune, on behalf of Department of Women's Studies, Bharatidasan University, NSS Kaveri College for Women, Regional Association for Women's Studies, and all the participants. I welcome Ms. Kiran Mohi ma'am for this program. Welcome you. I feel very happy to welcome all the participants and organizers of the program, Professor Manimekalai, Dr. Shubha, Dr. Shamim Banu. With a special thanks, I welcome Dr. Neela for their constant support for conducting this 1 month program. Once again, I welcome you all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your warm welcome. May I now request Professor N. Manimekalai, Dean Faculty of Arts, Director and Head, Department of Women's Studies, Bharatidasan University, to introduce our today's resource person. Welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, Neela. I also thank Dr. Murugeshwari for the welcome. So we have a renowned and eminent scholar to talk to us today, Ms. Kiran Muge. She is currently the editor newsletter of Indian Association for Women Studies, formerly the vice president of Indian Association for Women Studies. And she had her MSc in economics from London School of Economics, so basically an economist. And before joining as a whole-time activist, she is basically an activist and trade union movement person, and long association with IDWA. And earlier, she worked in several government and academic institutions. Even now, she is also she is serving as the visiting faculty to the Center for Women Studies, Pune University. And currently, she is the Maharashtra State Vice President and member of the Central Executive Committee of the IDWA at the national level. And which is IDWA, you all know, one of the India's largest mass organization for rural and urban women, which intervenes and conducts struggles at the grassroots as well as policy level on various gender issues. And in that capacity, Kiran would be focusing on the various policies of the government and critically analyze and how it is reaching or not reaching, what is the gap. And that is what these women's organizations are doing, and very much IDWA is at it. And she would also be talking earlier before going into this government policy as such, would be focusing some light on the impact of COVID on women. And I think we didn't have any much discussion on that. Though we had a separate one-day webinar where our own friends Viputi and Indrani spoke on that, but in this 1 month program we didn't have, and therefore it is good that Kiran would also be focusing on that. And she has served as a Maharashtra State Secretary and President and National Secretary of the organization also earlier. So that is the kind of credentials in the sense how grassroots activist she is, how she is associated with union, trade union, and nationally connected on the one hand, but with the grassroots population on the other. And whenever we meet, we talk about the vulnerability of the working class and the kind of the informal sector workers, particularly the women. What is the kind of issue? We can learn a lot from when you discuss with or interact with Kiran. And she's also founder, president of the Pune Zilla Harkar Sangatna, a CIHU affiliated trade union instituted to address the problems of domestic workers. So we always discuss about the kind of issues that the domestic workers face, and she very much associated with that also. And this particular union is in contact with over 40,000 domestic workers across the Pune metropolitan region. So that is the kind of the capacity or the strength of this particular union. And she also has been earlier said she is with academic department as visiting faculty, and she has also been the member of the internal compliance committee to prevent sexual harassment at workplaces in various organizations. There in the University of Pune, the Police Commissioner Modern College, VIT University, and JSPM institutions, and many other. And she's also the member of the advisory committee set up for overseeing the implementation of the PCP&DT Act, and that is all names sexual-active abortion, to prevent sexual-active abortion Act of the Pune Municipal Corporation and the state of Maharashtra. So there are many such credentials. We really don't find time to elaborate, but at the same time, we have a very right person to talk on the and a critique of the government policies and what is really missing or what has been done and what has to be done. All these issues will be discussed today in this 45 to 50 minutes discussion. And on behalf of the organizing partners and also my own behalf and my colleagues and participants behalf, I welcome you, Kiran, for this webinar, and I'm looking forward to listen to you. Hi, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we start?
Thank you, ma'am, for your nice introduction. May I now request Ms. Kiran Mohe, activist, AC member, editor, newsletter, IIWS Pune, to take over the session. Welcome you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, and namaskar, and as you say, vanakkam to all of you. And thank you very much for that very elaborate introduction. Thank you to the Department of Women's Studies, Bharatidasan University, the Kaveri College, and to the Regional Association of Women's Studies for inviting me to speak on this topic. And also all my colleagues from the Indian Association of Women's Studies, and particularly Dr. Mani Mekalai, who sort of persuaded me to speak to you on this topic. So what I thought, when we were discussing what I should be speaking was, I thought that since we are living in the times of this COVID pandemic, maybe we should also be critically looking at what has been the impact of COVID on women and what has been the government response. Particularly since we are in a gender sensitization course, I thought that could be our perspective. So, of course, it's a very broad topic and it has many dimensions to it. So I thought that I would place a few points for you, and since this is a 1 hour session, maybe I can speak for about another 35 minutes and then we can have some discussion. So is that all right? So is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So
Okay,
maybe
okay.
you can also, if I'm over going over my time limit, then you can also indicate to me. Yeah, maybe 5 minutes before. Yeah. So my topic today, friends, is the COVID-19 pandemic, women and government policies. And of course, the first thing that we have to note is that we are all experiencing the pandemic in increasing numbers. And I think when we started off with it in March, perhaps we hadn't really understood what its dimensions are going to be. But unfortunately, we are now reaching a situation where we are now probably number 3 in the world, just behind the US and Brazil. And as of date, I think we've reached about 14.8 lakh cases, more than 33,000 deaths. And on an average, we are adding 50,000 cases a day. Now, but the reason why I'm reiterating these numbers is sometimes when we just pick up the newspaper and read them, they are just numbers. And sometimes I think when there are too many and too large numbers, we cannot connect with them. So, I was just looking at some figures and they were saying that the number of people who have died in the United States due to COVID is much more than the total number of deaths that occurred of US soldiers in the Vietnam War over 20 years. I mean, when you put it in that kind of perspective, I think it makes a lot of difference. And so I think if we are sensitive individuals and citizens, we should be trying to understand, particularly because many of us are still relatively in privileged positions, what it means that, this kind of pandemic is raging around us in this country. And I'm particularly sort of sensitized to it because I'm living in the state of Maharashtra, which I think is leading with more than almost 4 lakh cases now. And I'm living in a city of Pune, which is now, I think, the hotspot in the country. But unfortunately, Tamil Nadu, which has, I think, more than 220,000 cases till yesterday, is not too far behind. And I know that many of us have experienced what has been the lockdown and what has been its impact. And that is really, in a sense, going to be the major portion of what I'm going to speak about today and how it has affected us as women in different situations across the country. But before that, just a few general points. You see, why is it that we need to look at the pandemic from a gender perspective? Yeah, it's a gender sensitization course. So is that why we're looking at it? I think, sometimes people tend to say that a virus is a virus. Ultimately, when it affects you as an individual, when it attacks you, does it really look at you whether you're a man or a woman, or whether you're an elderly person or a young child, or whether you're a Maharashtrian or a Punjabi, or are you from a particular caste? Are you a Dalit? Are you upper caste? Are you a Hindu? Are you a Christian? Are you a Muslim? After all, the virus is neutral, isn't it? But the point is that though the virus may be neutral and therefore the virus is affecting you as a human being, as a human host, that shall we put it like that, the system, the society that we live in is not neutral, right? So though the virus is neutral, our response to the attack very much depends on where we are located in this whole socio-economic framework, our own framework in society. Let me give you an example. Italy in Europe has been one of the countries which has been severely affected by the pandemic. And in fact, also because they didn't really pay attention to it in the beginning and realized what its consequences will be much later. And in Italy, they reached a situation in the country when they practically ran out of hospital beds and hospital care. And at that point, they actually had to take a policy decision that the care and the hospitalization would no longer be available to the elderly and the infirm, and they would prioritize in terms of who would be given this health care, and they prioritized on the younger sections of the population. So what I'm trying to say is, therefore, that there is nothing like neutrality even in that sense. And so we in our country have to understand what has been the impact of the pandemic on women, because women in the location of our particular socioeconomic framework. And then it's not just the impact, but we also have to understand whether the government's policies and packages, which have been announced from time to time with much fanfare in this country, with very large numbers again, 20 lakh crores or 1.76 lakh crores, with big names like the Garib Kalyan Yojana or the Atmanirbhar Yojana. So what do these policies and packages really mean for women? And are they, I mean, our analysis ultimately has to be in terms of, are they commensurate with the problems and the challenges that are being faced by women? So that is going to be the framework. But before I even come to that, I think we also have to understand the context in which this pandemic hit us, because that context has a bearing on the policies and programs that have been announced to deal with the COVID pandemic, and also because that will give us an understanding of how these are actually operating. So I think there are 3 points that I would like to place before you as the context of the pandemic, and then come to the actual impact and the policy. The first point that I want to make, and especially because I've been introduced as an economist and I do look at things in that perspective, is that we have to understand that the pandemic hit us at a time when the Indian economy was already, in a certain sense, in a crisis. Yeah, there are several dimensions to that crisis, and I am not going into those details because we don't have so much time. But if you remember, especially around the time that the budget was being introduced, this year's budget, and a little before, during December and January, at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, around February, there were 2 big debates in our country. One about the growth rate and the GDP, and whether, you know, the growth rate is going up or down or stagnant or whatever. And the debate was also caused by the fact that there was different sets of figures that were coming out. There was a debate about whether the GDP figures were comparable with the earlier GDP figures. And there was this big thing about whether the economy is really growing or whether the figures are showing that it is growing, but it is actually not growing. So there was a question being raised by Indian economists and people studying the Indian economy from within and outside about whether the Indian economy was actually in decline or not. And this was, of course, being fiercely contested by the government, particularly from the Niti Aayog, etc. But the other and even more pressing issue that was being raised was the question of whether employment, or shall we put it the other way around, unemployment was growing in the economy, because ultimately that is critical. I mean, whether the growth rate goes up or down, ultimately whether people have jobs, because you have to think of human beings, and whether people have jobs, and then whether people have incomes, and ultimately that's the real thing, isn't it? The real part of the economy. So there was a big debate about whether unemployment in our country is going up, and there was this debate around what is called the periodic labor force survey, and the data was in quotes leaked, and there was discussion about whether the unemployment rate was actually showing 6% or whatever. And so there were 2 issues at stake, I would say, at that point, just as the pandemic hit us. One was the question of the growth of the Indian economy, and the second was the question of the growing unemployment in the Indian economy. So to sum up, there was a question mark about the trajectory of the Indian economy, and many were criticizing government policies for pushing the Indian economy into a state of decline. And I think whatever the debates, our own everyday experience and my own experience as an activist working on the ground actually seemed to show that the economy was in a crisis, whether it was in the rural sector, whether there was an industrial recession, whether it was in terms of, the informal sector being squeezed, not getting enough pay, that kind of thing. So that's one point which we need to keep in mind, because you're talking now about an economy which is already in a crisis and then is hit by the pandemic and its aftermath. So that's one. The second point that I want to make is that we have been experiencing in our country since 1992 a set of policies which we call neoliberal economic policies. They used to be called the new economic policy at that time, in contrast to what we have called for many years the whole Nehruvian paradigm of more self-reliant economic policies. But I don't think now we can call the neoliberal economic policies new any longer, because they have been in existence for more than 30 years almost. The point here I'm trying to make is therefore that we are now functioning very strongly in a framework of neoliberal economic policies. And the point I'm trying to make is that that framework is very much the framework in which all our policy makers and all those who are in power and the bureaucracy and the administration are thinking in terms of. And the crux of one of the, I would say, pivotal points of that policy has been that the private sector has been valorized over the public. And public services in our country have progressively over the last 30 years, A, been underfunded, B, to a certain sense, denigrated, and 3, overburdened. And this is particularly in the case of health, education, water, sanitation, irrigation, public distribution system. What I'm saying is what ordinary people access or need. Ordinary people's needs in terms of what we normally say food, shelter, clothing, sanitation. But here I'm talking more in terms of the services that public use. And I'm making this point because now in the context of the pandemic, health services and particularly public health services have suddenly assumed a huge amount of importance. And even education to a certain extent, we'll come to that. So the second point, the first point that I made, that the economy was in a sense in a crisis. The second point that I made, that we have been working and functioning in a neoliberal framework in which the public sector has been pushed back to a sense, and the private sector has been given a larger status in the scheme of things, so as to say. And the third point I want to make, and I think that is the critical point, is that whatever it is, I would say that these policies have led to a growing inequality in this country. But the fact is that there is a huge amount of inequality now that exists in our country, and that inequality has also been growing over the last few decades. And you know that every year,
Kiran, your voice is not heard.
Yes, ma'am.
There is a connection problem.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Kiran, ma'am, you are not audible, ma'am.
Kiran, you are not audible. Some problem there with the connection, I believe. Your
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
network. Yeah.
Madam left the meeting, ma'am.
She'll come.
Yes, ma'am. Karupasamy sir, can you turn off your video, sir? Kiran ma'am, kindly unmute yourself, ma'am. Kiran ma'am, kindly unmute yourself, ma'am.
Okay. Can
And
you hear me?
now you are audible, ma'am. Now you are audible, ma'am.
I think there was a small
Connection problem.
break
Yes,
in
ma'am.
the internet.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Yes, ma'am.
can you tell me where I stopped? I'm sorry for this. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. You are audible, ma'am. We can
Okay.
hear you, ma'am.
Okay. So, I
About
was
that policy.
making the
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
making the point about inequality, and I was just
Yes.
saying that there is a huge amount of inequality in the country, as a result of which the bottom 60% own hardly 5% of the wealth. But inequality in our country exists not just in economic terms, but there is a structural inequality that also comes out because of our social situation. So, since we are looking at this whole question in a gender sensitization course, of course, we are saying that patriarchy is one of the systems which also causes inequality. Like in our country, the whole caste structure is a huge source of inequality. So there are not just economic reasons, but there are social reasons why inequality exists. But it's economic, it's caste, it's gender, but there are other factors. There is, for instance, the whole question of region. I mean, I live in a state in this country which is considered to be one of the richest states in terms of per capita income. But actually, if you go to about 40 kilometers from where I stay, you will find that people do not even have 2 square meals to eat. So the lack of economic development is something that is there regionally within where we stay, across states, across regions. And there is also the question of communities, for instance, that the whole Sachar Committee report told us. That how, for instance, the minorities, the Muslims, are not represented in administration, or they are so backward in terms of education. So the point I'm trying to make here is that there are different types of structural inequalities that exist in our economy, and they all have, are interlinked with each other. So economic inequality is also linked to caste inequality. Caste inequality is linked to gender. Gender is also where you live. So there is a complex matrix of inequalities, and at the end of it, where you are located, in this whole complex matrix will actually determine how you are impacted. So whether it's the impact of the pandemic or whether it's the impact of the policies for the pandemic, both will actually, the impact will be determined in a sense by where exactly you are located. So if I am a middle class woman, for me, work from home means that I'm sitting at home and maybe I'm working on the computer, I'm working for a IT company, so my job may be secure, but at the same time, I am also overburdened with the double burden in the house. But if I am a poor Dalit agricultural worker or a domestic worker living in a large urban slum, then for me, there is no work from home. For the last 3 months, I have been asked to stay at home because the pandemic has also stigmatized me. And therefore, I have no work. So there's no work from home. It's work at home. And it's also many other things. So this is the point I'm trying to make, that there are structural inequalities in our economy and in our society, and it's the structural inequalities at the end which affect us in terms of the pandemic and the policies and packages that have been announced. But part of the policies and packages, before coming to the economic side of it, I want to talk about actually what the main policy initiative of the government has been, and that has been, in a sense, the lockdown. You know, we often think in terms of policies and packages in terms of what was announced. But really what was announced to start with was the lockdown. the lockdown was the first strategy to deal with the pandemic. And there are many views about it. I'm not going into that. But I think there are three things which have really stuck in my mind, three images of what the lockdown meant for women. There's one image of that poor woman at that Muzaffarnagar station in Bihar, her body lying there and her child trying to wake her up. She was one of those thousands and lakhs of people, those migrant workers whom we all saw on our television screens and maybe some of us even outside our houses on the streets, walking back because there was no work, there was no food, there was no shelter. And she was one of those more than perhaps 1,000 people documented, the undocumented deaths we don't have, who actually died in that process. And that image is an image that, as I said, doesn't really go away from me. The other image, and there are several like that, but this is a story that I read and it stayed with me for many weeks and is still in my mind, is a story about a woman in Delhi, a pregnant woman who reached her, her last stages of pregnancy and was about to deliver. And in this COVID situation, she and her husband went around in Delhi to 18 hospitals over a period of 8 hours, but she didn't get any admission. She was just wanting to have a baby. And at the end of the day, she and her unborn child both died. And I think the third image which somehow stuck with me, and that's also because I work, as Mani introduced me, with domestic workers, is that advertisement which was then hurriedly taken off of that company which was selling chapati dough makers. And it showed a pair of hands, soiled, dirty, black, which was supposed to be the hands of the domestic worker. And then the clean dough coming out from the machine and the contrast and the kind of appeal, in a sense, that was being made, that instead of your domestic worker who might bring all this infection into the house, why don't you just use the machine and replace her? And of course, this is an advertisement that was unfortunately even endorsed by an elected member of parliament. And then, of course, there was a big furor over it and it was taken off. The point I'm trying to make is that these are the images of what the lockdown meant for women. And then if you contrast them, there were also these images, especially through the social media, of well-off people enjoying their holiday, playing games, the men cooking, and people having a lot of fun and trying to make the best of the pandemic. But it's interesting, isn't it, that now all these images have slowly gone off the screen. So there was this period of euphoria when everybody thought that, oh, this is a temporary phase and let's make merry at home. But all that has now disappeared and we are actually left with what the pandemic really means for us. And what does it mean? What does it mean for women? But what does it mean for people in general? And then women as part of it, and how are women being affected? I think the biggest impact of the pandemic and the lockdown as a strategy has been the loss of livelihood. And that has been across the board. I mean, it's not just that informal sector people have been affected, but everyone from people working in sort of high-paid IT companies, in startups, office staff, factory workers, agricultural workers, people in construction, domestic workers, street vendors, you name it. Every occupation has been affected. Yeah. And now we have to remember that this is in the background of an already existing industrial recession. Yeah. So think of it. Think of the fact that in 2016 of November, there was already a shock given to the economy through the whole demonetization process. And many people actually went out of business in a sense because of that. And now, after 2 or 3 years, we are now with this other shock. So the shock is huge. And really speaking, in this, because we are in a gender sensitization program, we don't really have gender disaggregated data to tell us what has been the differential impact on women, and then from women in different sections. So we have, of course, now a lot of studies which are coming out, and as all of you who are academics and research scholars and listening to this, I would urge you that really we need to, generate a whole lot of new data about how the pandemic has differentially impacted on different sections of women in different ways. So one has been the whole question of livelihood and employment. The other, that there is a huge, according to me, nutrition crisis. Yeah, because most people who didn't have any work obviously didn't have enough to eat. And then our old understanding, which hasn't changed, that within the household women eat least and last, became operable here. And it was compounded by the fact that the particular nature of the pandemic and therefore the lockdown meant that even government feeding programs, and for instance in Tamil Nadu you have such a well-established and such a good noon meal program, which has been replicated in many other states, and of course the Government of India's midday meal program, even the ICDS supplies, all of that which has impacted on the girl child, on pregnant women, on lactating women, etc. And we all have that Bihar story that was carried in the Indian Express, that it's because of the lack of the midday meal scheme that actually some children dropped out of school and have become rag pickers. So now there is this whole question of how the nutrition crisis is going to have a long-term impact on women and on the girl child, and therefore on their future prospects, because we all know that this is also a problem. The third, I think, on the whole question of education, there's a lot of discussion, and most of you are from the educational sector, so you know what the digital divide means. But just in terms of primary education, they are saying that only 20% of children actually have access to some kind of device. And then, of course, within the household, there will always be the discrimination. So perhaps a girl child may not get access to it at all. So I think that's something that we also need to study, because you will be able to tell us how many girl students are now going to take admission in this era of online education, and how online education is going to have its own impact on women, on women's studies, on the teaching of women's studies, the content of women's studies, etc. But I'm just saying that this has been one of the major impacts on education. And the last point in terms of impact has been the social and the domestic impact of the pandemic. There are, many studies and reports coming out about how domestic violence has gone up hugely during this period, because people have been confined within the house, and, the kind of tensions, also the economic tensions due to the pandemic and the loss of livelihood, all of which have affected. The double burden, all the pretty stories about men helping in the household, etc., has been, I think, a temporary phenomenon, and now it has again come on women. So working from home, plus the double burden, looking after children, all that. The mental stress, and we also have to look at the number of suicides that have gone up during this period. Yeah. And lastly, the kind of superstitions and the kind of unscientific information that is being is spreading, and I think that's also because people are scared, people are terrified, and when there are no medical answers, I think that makes a lot of difference. We've always seen in tribal areas that when medical services don't reach then you have a situation where the witch doctors take over. And I think a similar kind of thing is actually happening in our... can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So I think a similar kind of thing is happening in society, that really speaking, when people do not have proper information, when there is so much, I would say almost a kind of a terror about what COVID means, what is its impact, if there's no vaccine at the moment, how are all of us going to survive in this kind of situation? And I think all kinds of unscientific information and superstition taking over in the sense and washing away so many years of us trying to, inculcate rational behavior in women and in people in general. So I think this has been the general impact of the COVID on us. And now what I want to say is that given that this has been the impact, has the government response been commensurate with these problems, these challenges that we are facing as women? I think there are two parts to the policy response. There is one which is what I would call a general macroeconomic response, and there is one which is a particularly COVID-directed response. And I want to talk about both things because people often only talk about the COVID part of it. They do not discuss the general economic policies or the general policies that are also being pursued by the government during this particular period. So I'll spend 2 minutes on that very briefly. But let us not forget that during this period, when people's livelihoods have been affected, when people are in distress, when we can see that that malnutrition is growing, that poverty is probably on the increase, the government has actually been pursuing a certain policy which is part of its earlier neoliberal economic policy. Look at, for instance, the manner in which the petrol and diesel prices have been continuously increasing. And I'm saying this because ultimately this is going to have an impact on prices, and that is going to affect adversely people who are already being pushed into a corner. Look at the decision to amend the Essential Commodities Act and the APMC Act, which in a way will take away the stocking limits, which will allow MNCs and big companies to buy directly from farmers, and which are going to again affect both farmers and consumers and women farmers and consumers in a different way. Look at the fact that the government has not actually paid the GST compensation that is due to states. And you will say, what has that got to do with COVID and with women? But because there is no GST compensation coming, and because the states are burdened with dealing with the whole pandemic and putting in place all these health services and all the other things that are necessary, governments are now actually turning to alcohol as a means of revenue generation. And in my state, for instance, the first thing that they did in the unlockdown was to open the liquor shops so that, they can get their excise revenue and use that to pay for the COVID response. Now, I mean, women, the first thing that women said is that if there was, domestic violence, that has even increased more when the liquor shops were open. Look at the amendments in labor laws, increasing the working hours from 8 to 12 hours. What does that mean for women, for instance, who in any case we know do double duty? They work in their factories and then they come home and they have to work them here. What about the suspension of labor laws by many states? And what about the packages? So I'm saying that I think we have to look at the COVID response both in terms of the general economic policies that have been pursued side by side with the particular COVID packages. And I'll just come to that. And I know that we are now going to be running out of time. So I will spend 5 minutes on analyzing the packages and then maybe we can have a response from it. There were 2 packages that were announced by the government. One in May and early, soon after the lockdown was announced, and the other which came in a series of announcements, first by the Prime Minister in terms of the total amount, and then sort of 5 sessions by the Finance Minister over a period of a week. Yeah, the first is what we call the Prime Minister's Garib Kalyan Yojana, the first package, which was of 1,76,000 crores, and the second package, which was the bigger package, and that was for 20 lakh crores. Yeah, I mean, even I get confused with the figures. Now, actually, when you look at the figures, I think one must understand that. In the first package, there were several schemes that were announced, and they sounded very attractive. The first was giving 5 kilos of grains free per person to all those who are covered under the National Food Security Act. The other was 2,000 rupees advance under the PM Kisan scheme, so that was actually putting money into the farmers' accounts. The third was 500 rupees in the Women Jan Dhan accounts. Yeah. The fourth was the free Ujjwala scheme. So all people who are covered under Ujjwala would be getting free gas LPG cylinders for the next few months. And then there was a scheme for self-help groups enhancing the credit limit from 10 lakhs to 20 lakhs. And there was also this 50 lakhs insurance premium to be paid for all the frontline health workers. And then there was an increase in the wages of Manrega by a princely sum of 20 rupees. So these were some of the things. But actually, when you look at the figures, and I very quickly want to say this, that 1,76,000 crores sounded huge. But actually, when you did the sums, we found that out of that, it was only about 50,000 crores, which was actually being put newly by the government. Yeah. Almost 48% of that total was really from the budget that had been announced about 2 or 3 months ago. Yeah. So really speaking, it was the Ujjwala and the Jan Dhan. I'm talking now in terms of women, which was going to benefit women. As far as the PM Kisan scheme is concerned, we know that women still don't have recognition as farmers independently. So yes, of course, the money would have benefited the total household, but not women in particular. And so actually, when you start looking at the amount of money that went towards, I mean, this is how we're talking about is allocation, right? We're not talking about actually what got spent, because we still have to look at those figures, and we always know that there is a huge gap between what is allocated and what is actually spent. But I would say that at the end of the day, if you actually did the sums, the COVID package, the first COVID package meant there was actually something like maybe an allocation of something between 500 and 750 rupees per woman. This is my calculation. That is the amount that the government was putting for us. And now if you compare it with the huge amount of unpaid work that actually women did and have been doing now during this period, then you wonder whether this is any kind of compensation. The other point I want to make here is about the other package which came as the PM's Atmanirbhar scheme. Yeah. Now, that was announced as saying that this is 10% of the GDP that is being given for COVID. Yeah. But when you actually analyze that package, again, when you do the sums, you find that out of that, actually, it is just about 1 lakh crores, which is actually going for directly COVID-related sort of schemes. Most of that, those 19,000 other, crores, 19,000 lakh crores, is actually in terms of credit. Yeah, there is allocation to NABARD, there is allocation to the public sector banks, there is allocation under the Mudra scheme for the medium and small enterprises, etc. So these are all credit schemes. Now the problem with the credit part of it, I'll come to that 1 lakh crore in a minute. But the problem with the credit schemes is that when will credit be used? Credit will be used by enterprises, even by self-help groups, when there is scope for selling what you are producing. But the main problem today, I think, in the economy because of the lack of livelihood and the lack of employment opportunities, the total, growing unemployment, is that there is no demand. Yeah, everything has come to a standstill. So unless you have a package that is able to actually generate demand in the economy, there is no point giving credit. Yeah, the credit will be used by the enterprise only when there is scope for production. And today we know that there is very little scope for production because there is no demand. So really what I'm trying to say is two things. That from the overall macroeconomic point of view, and I'm making this point because otherwise we look at women only as a small sector in terms of what they need for domestic violence, what they need as self-help groups, what they need as a pregnant woman, what they need in terms of, only in that gender role. But they are not only women, they are citizens of this country, they are workers. And therefore, general policies also affect them. So I'm saying that the macroeconomic policy in this country, which affects all of us as citizens and then women also in a different capacity, has to be a demand generating policy. So your policy has to be actually to give something in the hands of people. And which is why you will see that most trade unions and most people's organizations have been saying that can you give people some money? 500 rupees in the Jan Dhan account of a woman is not enough to generate demand. And by giving 5 kilos of free grain, what about that 7.5 crore tons of food grains that is actually lying in your godowns? Why can't it be given to people instead of feeding the rats in the government godowns? And you cannot give people only free rice and wheat. You need to give them other essential commodities. They need to buy milk, they need to buy oil, they have to pay rent, they have their children's education, they have transport. So there are other needs which need to be taken care of. And your lockdown has destroyed their livelihood capabilities. And so really speaking, what is immediately necessary is a cash transfer. And there was a lot of debate about the cash transfer and whether the cash transfer should be given or not. But the government of India ultimately decided against it because they said they didn't have an architecture. But then the question is that you spend crores, thousands of crores of rupees on Aadhaar, on JAM as you called it, on linking the Jan Dhan account with the bank, with the Aadhaar, with the mobile. And so how is it that after all this you are saying that you do not have an architecture to transfer, make a cash transfer into the people's account that will actually enable people to spend and which will revive the economy? So I know that I am short of time now, so I think I'll stop here. I just want to conclude by saying that we have to look at the entire government's response to COVID in a holistic fashion. There has been nothing in terms of a response, for instance, on the domestic violence front. There has been nothing in terms of providing childcare, for instance, or even thinking about how it has to be done in a situation where, for instance, women in the IT sector have to work from home. So your response has to be one in which you will be able to take up all the dimensions of how women have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Other countries did it. New Zealand, which is being talked about, did it. Germany did it. So many countries, in fact, which are being ruled by women leaders have thought about what has been the gendered impact of COVID-19 on women in their countries and produced responses accordingly. Unfortunately, I feel that the government of India has been rather gender blind when it comes to its COVID-19 response. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your wonderful presentation about various government policies and schemes. Participants, do you have any queries?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kiran, for that discourse. In fact, nobody has discussed so far, so you have brought that new dimension of how to look at the packages and we are only looking into the absolute numbers, how it is being announced. Oh, so much, 20 lakhs crores. But what is the hidden point is that partly it is from the budget. That is one aspect. The other one also is equally disturbing is for credit. And I've been working with this women entrepreneurs. They are not able to. They are calling me, madam, there is a 50,000 rupees or 60. So how to avail this? And as you said, it may not be even going for the production because there is no purchasing power. And as you rightly pointed out, demand. And this is the being economist. The government has to come forward to inject public investment to trigger the demand, what you call the defective demand, which is very much absent now. So the other dimensions you have also spoke about, the kind of issues of the sector, women, and how it is gender blind. At last, that is what we have to see. And so we shouldn't be, and also there are superstitious. What I was only thinking, because it is to be pointed to the participants, what are those unscientific, at least one or two examples, if you could share, and particularly in this entire nation, or at least from Pune, what kind of this thing here, several WhatsApp messages keep coming. You do this, you do that, you will completely done away with, you build your, yeah, please throw some light.
One small example which came to Edva from North India more than Maharashtra. Now they are talking about a Karuna Mai. So this is a female deity. So just see how Karuna is personified now as a woman. So there is this woman who is
Karuna Mai. What does it mean? Karuna Mai?
Yeah.
Mai.
So,
Okay.
Mai. So Karuna Mai would be like Karuna goddess. Yeah, in a sense. And the Karuna goddess is one who is now causing all this havoc. And so, now you have to invoke the Karuna Mai and you have to do puja and that kind of thing to make sure that the Karuna Mai is placated. And it's interesting how the Mai is also in, the crisis. The crisis is also personified in terms of a woman. So I think, these are examples. And then there are all kinds of things.
Participants can raise questions. I think some questions are there in the chat box.
Yes, chat box. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
yeah, you please read, Neela.
Yes, ma'am.
There is some disturbance for Kiran.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
She can put up her this one visuals, video. Kiran, you can just use your audio alone so that. Kiran, are you there?
Kiran, ma'am.
No, she is not there. By then, you just get the questions so that we can.
Yes.
Kiran, I think something has happened. It is already time also.
Yes, ma'am. Kiran, ma'am.
Yeah. Just come and. Kiran?
Madam has left the meeting, ma'am. She
Yeah.
joined.
Yes. So, yeah, she's gone on now, coming out. Maybe joining back.
Yes, ma'am.
So there are some questions.
Ma'am, kindly unmute yourself, ma'am. Kiran, ma'am. Can you unmute, ma'am?
Yeah.
There is some questions in the chat box, ma'am. Shall I read the questions, ma'am?
Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Character assassination of women by this is a question by Gahandeep Kaur.
But what is the context? I didn't get it. Character assassination of which women?
Gahandeep, ma'am. Gahandeep, ma'am. Can you unmute your mic and you can ask? Single, ma'am. She has mentioned a single, ma'am.
Single women.
Single women.
Yeah.
No, even then she can substantiate.
Yes, but I mean, in the context of COVID, are you saying? Yeah. Are you saying in the context of COVID? I'm sorry, but I am not understanding the question in the context of the COVID pandemic. Yes, women are always character assassinated, single or otherwise. Thank you.
Yes,
Any
ma'am.
other
Thank you.
questions? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Actually, we have gas insurance based on what provide government to the society except the 2 months money deposit. What about your opinion, ma'am? Shall I
For
repeat the
gas?
question?
Yes,
Gas
please.
in Actually, we have gas insurance based on what provide government to the society except the 2 months money deposit. What about your opinion, ma'am?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Even I too, ma'am.
Yeah,
Okay, ma'am.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, anything
Okay,
else?
ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Searching, ma'am. How much money earmarked for women welfare? Any idea, ma'am? This is a question by Sharmila Suresh.
Yeah, there is no money earmarked for women's welfare in the COVID pandemic at all. As I said, women are also viewed in terms of gas and food. So Ujjwala, they will give you free gas cylinders and they will say 5 kilos of grain free. And that is their perspective that women do cooking, women, need to provide, our food providers. But there is nothing, as I said, in terms of any particular scheme to help women in distress, nothing for increased domestic violence, for instance. No instructions have been given to police stations that they should continue to take cases of violence against women. In fact, during this pandemic, we have found that in many places, since the police are busy implementing and supervising the lockdown, cases of domestic violence, child abuse, etc., have all been ignored by the police stations. So there is absolutely nothing in terms of women's welfare in the packages. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Another question, ma'am. Any scheme for transgender? This is a question by Mardibandi, sir. Any scheme for transgender?
No scheme for transgender, no mention of the word transgender. In fact, no scheme even for the physically challenged who are even more affected, and women, women, challenged women, even more affected in this pandemic. So that's exactly what the point I was trying to make, that women are also not a general category and they're all not equal. There are strata within women. Women are also divided according to caste, class, community, their region, their physical status, etc. Transgenders are also, a different category. And they all are affected differently, but there is no kind of vision like that in the COVID package. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Manimeghala, ma'am, shall we wind up the session, ma'am?
Yeah. I think you have done all the questions, and
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
so it was giving a new dimension of understanding in the gender sensitization course. And of course, there are a lot of positive comments about this
Appreciation. Yes,
session.
ma'am. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And
Yes.
so thank you, Kiran, for being with
Thank
us
you
to
very
share
much.
this. And
Thank you, Kiran, ma'am.
yeah. So now it is Dr. Shubha.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
May I now request Dr. S. Shubha, Assistant Professor, Department of Women's Studies, to render the vote of thanks. Welcome you, ma'am.
Yes. Very good afternoon to Madam Kiran. Hi, how are you? On behalf of webinar participants and the
Sorry,
organizers.
Shubha was the sub-team coordinator.
Yes, that's how I know. That's why in the beginning I said all my colleagues from IWS, I'm happy to be with them.
Yes, thank you. On behalf of the organizers and the webinar participants, I'm very happy to thank Comrade Kiran Mohe to narrated the in-depth manner how the neoliberal policies frame the COVID packages and how it is created the inequalities in the country, particularly in the structural inequalities, how it created and the impacts on different
walks of life, particularly in the COVID impact situations, in nutrition, education, domestic violence, and how the government policies are very discriminatory in nature, how it is put forefront in the private rather than public. So such a way, it is a very, very wonderful and very depth session to look at how to re-look at the COVID packages and policies, government policies, particularly in understand the impact of the COVID policies and packages in holistic need to holistic perspective. Thank you, Comrade Kiran, to enlighten our minds and perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all. Thank you all the participants. Meet you all tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiran.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Nice
you.
seeing virtually. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Bye.